pound back my one Smirnoff Ice and then be absolutely blotto. And her boobs were huge. I don't know, like a drunk science experiment. Yeah, this one's a bummer. I see you in there forever. Let's play Truth or Scare, Baby and Childbirth Edition. The internet is a wild place. It's like the wild, wild west out here. So hang out with me today. We are going to debunk 3 very popular childbirth myths. And the one that I want to start off with, I hear this one all the time. And that is, if you go out and you're drinking all the alcohol, you then need to pump and dump your breast milk so it clears the alcohol from your system a lot quicker. And I'm going to tell you right now, big old myth, like big myth. So let's talk about why this is a myth and what you should be doing instead. The amount of alcohol in your bloodstream is equivalent to the amount of alcohol in your breast milk. So in a nutshell, if you are hammered, so is your breast milk. But we know that everyone sort of deals with alcohol differently, and it depends on so many different factors. Depends on your weight. How many drinks did you have? How quickly did you have those drinks? Did you eat food while you were having those drinks? And things like how fast your body naturally metabolizes that alcohol, those all go into play. That's kind of the reason why you might be able to have 3 drinks and then have a great evening, and I might pound back my one Smirnoff Ice and then be absolutely blotto and have to call it at 9 p.m. So how do we know what is safe for our babies based on our specific situation? And the key here is that you kind of don't. And so really, no alcohol is always going to be the safest bet for knowing that your breast milk is safe for your baby. But we also know that you probably just abstained from drinking alcohol for, 38, 39, 41, 42 weeks, and maybe now you want to have a margarita. So we're going to go over how you can safely drink alcohol while you are breastfeeding and how you know when you might need to get rid of that milk and wait to feed your baby. The CDC reports that moderate consumption of alcohol, which is 1 standard drink per day, this is 1 standard drink. We're not talking a fishbowl. We're not talking a box of wine. I see you in there. 1 standard drink per day should not be harmful to our infants when you are breastfeeding. But we really need to think about the timing of that drink, because we know that the alcohol level in your breast milk, it's going to peak around 30 to 60 minutes after you have that drink, and it's going to remain there for 2 to 3 hours after you have a drink. So that the way you want to do this, if you want to be safest, is that you want to feed your baby, and then you want to start that drink as soon as you can after feeding your baby, because we know that then that's going to be the longest amount of time that your baby's going to go before they need their next feed. And usually, that's in that 2, 3, 4 hour mark. And we know that the alcohol in your bloodstream, if you have 1 standard drink, is going to start to fade out then. So that's kind of how you can time it to be the safest. But what do we do if we're having more than 1 of these standard drinks? How do we make sure that that breast milk is safe for our baby? And if we pump out that breast milk that contains alcohol and we're going to replace it with fresh breast milk, does that make it safe? And that's where the myth comes in, so let's debunk it. So let's say you go on a bender. Your friend's getting married, you got to go to the Chippendales. I totally get it. It was a really good show. And then you have more than that 1 standard drink, right? You're having 3, 5, 7, 12 drinks in an evening. And now we know that alcohol is building up. We also know, because we're supposed to wait 2 to 3 hours after 1 drink, that the amount of time is building up where it's going to be safe to feed your baby. And now the amount of time that there is alcohol in your bloodstream is a lot longer than the amount of time that your baby can go between feeds. So the question is, if you pump out the milk that's already in there, that's, soaking up all of that alcohol, then the fresh stuff coming in, is it going to be safe for baby? And the answer is absolutely no. If you are intoxicated, then your breast milk, no matter how much you pump and dump, is not going to be safe for baby. Because remember, the amount of alcohol in your bloodstream is going to equal the amount of alcohol in your breast milk. So you can pump and then get rid of that milk, because chances are, if you have to go like 8, 10, 12, 14 hours without feeding baby, you're going to need to pump, because you are now going to be very engorged, because you're used to your baby removing that milk. Also, if you are going that long without feeding your baby, and maybe you're giving your baby express breast milk that you planned ahead and pulled aside to have, that didn't have alcohol in it, or maybe you are supplementing with formula so that you could have gone out and enjoyed an evening, whatever the case is, if you are not feeding baby for that very prolonged period of time, you also risk tanking your breast milk supply, because it is supply and demand, and you have to remove the milk to make more milk. So suddenly your body's like, oh, I guess we're dropping a nighttime feed or 2 or 3, depending on how much you drank. And so your body might actually end up making less breast milk. And so pumping might be necessary, but it's not going to clear the alcohol from your breast milk. A lot of companies make these test strips that you can sort of dip into your breast milk after a night out, like a I don't know, like a drunk science experiment, but I cannot speak to how accurate these are. But if you've used them, let me know what you thought about them. And then also I always say talk to your provider. Talk to them at your prenatal appointments or chat with them at your 6-week appointment after you've had your baby, because a lot of times your provider will tell you if you are not intoxicated and you feel okay and you feel safe to take care of your baby and you can drive legally and you feel safe to drive a motor vehicle, then very likely your breast milk is safe to feed to your baby. Because remember, that blood alcohol level and that breast milk alcohol level, they are basically going to be the same. So if you are not drunk, chances are it is safe to feed your baby that milk. We'll carry on talking about boobs, because why not? And we will bust the second myth on my list, which is bigger breasts produce more breast milk. And I can tell you, I've seen a lot of breasts. I know quite a few women who are part of the itty bitty committee, and they are oversuppliers. I also have seen women with very large pendulous breasts who really struggle with their breast milk supply. So I can tell you now, size here, when we're talking about breasts, it doesn't really matter. But I'm not just going to talk about causation. Let's get into the science of breastfeeding and talk about why this is a big myth. We know that boobs come in all different shapes and sizes, which is amazing, but we also know that with the right information and the right support, most women will go on to make adequate amounts of breast milk for their newborn baby, regardless of, whether their cups runneth over. And that has to do with the anatomy of a breastfeeding breast, because there's actually lots of components that go into making a boob, okay? There's like 6 different components that go into the anatomy of a breastfeeding breast. And we know that it's actually fatty tissue that determines the size of your breast. But really, the fatty tissue is not involved in the breast milk making area of the breast. You see where I'm going with this? Your follow-up question is very likely, but Tina, my boobs got huge during pregnancy, and it's very likely that they did, but that wasn't because of an increase in your fatty tissue. That's because of an increase in pregnancy and lactation of your glandular tissue, aka your milk ducts. And if you guess that glandular tissue is what is responsible for making and moving the milk, then ding, 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 you would be right. And that glandular tissue is mostly located closer to the nipple, so that with an effective deep latch, your baby should be able to remove adequate amounts of breast milk from your boobs, even if they aren't as big as your great Aunt Sally's. I don't know if you had a great Aunt Sally, but I did, and her boobs were huge. Take it off the table, bigger boobs, more milk, boom. Busted. But I do want to talk to you about your breasts in pregnancy, because we do expect them to grow during your pregnancy. That's an anticipated change. And now you know that it's because that glandular tissue is multiplying. It's getting your body prepped to go ahead and breastfeed your baby once they are born. And lactation professionals, we actually look at that increase in size during pregnancy as a positive indicator for future breast milk production. So I wanted to bring this up. If you are pregnant and you haven't noticed much of a change in the size of your breasts during your pregnancy, I encourage you to reach out to an IBCLC and chat about it with them. Maybe come up with a plan for breastfeeding once your baby does come out, because support and information is always best. Now, I'm not an IBCLC, but I am a certified breastfeeding specialist. My name is Tina. I am a labor and delivery nurse, and I am also a mom of 4. If you are new here, welcome, welcome. Please consider subscribing, sticking around for, more chaos. And if you are not new here, you're already used to the chaos. So let's keep it rolling with the myths we're gonna bust. Look at us, we are already on the last myth on the list. This one is losing your mucus plug means that you are in labor. Yeah, this one's a bummer. If I could tell you all of the times I had excited expecting moms showing up with their mucus plugs in their purse, this video would be really, really long, because it's kind of exciting. You've been told you're going to lose your mucus plug and then you're going to go into labor, but sadly, that's not the truth, and let me tell you why. The truth about the mucus plug, this is a collection of mucus, just as it sounds. It forms during pregnancy, sort of at the opening of the cervix. It acts as like a little extra layer of protection for your baby in their little amniotic compartment, sort of like a bit of a bouncer. And it is true that if your cervix is doing some small changes, maybe a little bit of dilating, maybe a little bit of effacing, this mucus plug can actually sort of come loose, and it can actually come out of the vagina into whatever you may be wearing, your Victoria's Secret thong or your granny panties, whatever it may be, okay? And if you have never seen a mucus plug, you go ahead and Google it right now. I'll wait.
A few moments later.
Now that you have that image burned into your memory forever, I'm still going to go ahead and describe it for you. So it looks kind of like thinner petroleum jelly, kind of slimy, kind of stringy, kind of goopy. It might have some brown or some pink streak through it. It feels almost like Jello if you were to rub it. And if it does come out in your underwear, it feels like a jellyfish is sort of sliding on out of there. And again, it can mean that your cervix is doing some small changes, and it can mean absolutely nothing, because these suckers can actually regenerate. So you could lose your mucus plug and then you could go another week and then you might actually go into labor. There's really no set time between losing your mucus plug and going into labor. And some people, that's me, have never lost their mucus plug. But I do assure you that even if you never see your mucus plug, you will still go on to have a baby. Now, what do you need to know? You need to know that if you lose your mucus plug, or you think you've lost your mucus plug, and you are preterm, so you are less than 37 weeks, at minimum, I'm going to need you to let your provider know or phone triage for assistance. And most people, I would say, you should proceed in to get checked out, because again, preterm, your baby is not done developing. So if you are losing your mucus plug because your cervix is doing some changing, then your provider is likely going to want to know that. What other myths do we need to look into? Because I'm a bit of a birth nerd, so I'm happy to dig into these. If you want to see me debunk some boomer parenting advice, you're going to want to click on that one right here. If you like this one, show it some love, consider subscribing, and as always, be happy, stay healthy, have fun. Bye.